Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is the first episode of my 2 videos about the French Revolution. A couple of weeks ago, I made 2 videos about Napoleon Bonaparte, which I posted almost at the same time as the release of a new movie entitled Napoleon. Based on my observation, the movie is well received by the public. And thanks to the movie, my videos are well received as well. As a professor of history, I'm very happy that public interest in history has been reignited once again. So I told myself, why not make a video about the French Revolution? Because, after all, everything about Napoleon was due to the French Revolution. But of course, the French Revolution did far more than creating Napoleon. As we shall see in more detail, there is a variety of reasons why the revolution happened. Internationally, the success of the American Revolution at the end of the 18th century sent several messages across the Atlantic Ocean: constitutional government, individual rights, and equality under law. The messages inspired many people in Europe. The French people in particular were receptive to these messages. The ordinary people in France were already fed up with the privileged class and high taxes. A revolution had been waiting to happen for some time. What finally triggered the revolution was a mounting financial crisis, which quickly escalated into an attack on the political and social institutions. In the process, the king and his wife were executed, and the old social and political order was destroyed. France was transformed from an absolute monarchy to a republic. 10 years later, however, the revolution came to an end when Napoleon had himself crowned as emperor. France went back to a monarchy. It is impossible to over-exaggerate the significance of the French Revolution in Europe and beyond. It marked the beginning of a completely new era. From then on, a series of political revolutions broke out, not only in Europe, but throughout the world, as people in different places were fighting for their own versions of liberty. It also promoted nationalism, which is a belief that a nation was not a group of royal subjects under an absolute monarchy, but a society of equal citizens. By the way, the content of these 2 videos is based on my published book, which is entitled Essentials of World History. For more detailed information about the French Revolution, you may want to read this book, which is available on Amazon. Although France had always been a strong force in Europe, it was under Louis XIV that France took off and became a big power. Coming to the throne at the age of 5, he reigned longer than any other French or any other major European monarch. During the time, he transformed the monarchy, brought about a golden age of art and literature, controlled a dazzling royal court at Versailles, annexed a few important territories, and established France as the dominant European power. His success earned his reputation as the Sun King, and he became known as Louis the Great. His rule became a symbol of absolute monarchy in Europe. He himself declared, "L'État c'est moi," which means in English, I am the state. During his reign, the country changed drastically from savage medieval ways to a more refined, exquisite living. By the late 18th century, France had become the center of Europe. The French culture was widely imitated and admired in Europe. France was wealthy, and even its underprivileged classes enjoyed a higher standard of living than their counterparts in neighboring states. However, behind the material wealth was the deep social gap. People in France were divided into 3 estates: the clergy, the nobility, and everyone else, who are known as commoners. The first 2 estates were minority in population, but occupied close to half of the land. The third estate occupied the overwhelming majority of the population, but the wealth was concentrated in the first 2 estates. The huge gap between the wealthy and the poor had been a threat to social stability. Besides, the very fact that the French people were better off, better educated, and better informed made them more willing to accept new ideas. In particular, they were influenced by the American Revolution, which symbolized freedom and equality. Within a society full of inequality, revolutionary ideas were growing, and calls for change could be heard louder and louder. A revolution was on its way. During the reign of Louis XIV, great amount of prestige and glory was created. But after he died, all of it began to fade. Although his heirs lived in great style and claimed to rule by divine rights, they were weak and politically incapable. Louis XV, the great-grandson of King Louis XIV, was intelligent enough and loved by the French people at first. But he was indecisive, pleasure-loving, and uninterested in the affairs of state. At home, he made little achievement. Abroad, his foreign policy, which were often designed and conducted secretly by his personal staff, was disastrous. The country was dragged into a couple of costly wars. In particular, during the 7 Years' War with Britain, France was defeated by the English. As a result, Canada and French India in North America had to be given to the English. Not only did France lose much of its prestige, it also got itself under heavy financial burden. When Louis XVI, who was grandson of King Louis XV, came to power, he was only 20 years old, an honest and good-natured young man, loved by his people initially. But, like his predecessor, he possessed few intellectual gifts. In social circles, he was shy and dull. In politics, he was indecisive, timid, unfit for the job of being a king. In addition, he suffered from the unpopularity of his Austrian-born wife, Marie Antoinette. The queen was young, beautiful, and elegant, but her few good qualities were overshadowed by her extravagance and insensitivity. She also often interfered in politics. She would scorn and ridicule her husband if he had accepted his counselor's advice. As a result, Louis XVI often made decisions without consulting other people, which made him even more unpopular. Under Louis XVI, the government spent enormous sums of money helping the American colonists in their fight against Britain, which was the arch-rival of France. The royal court continued its extravagant style. France came near to the collapse of finance. Realizing the impossibility to levy any more tax on the Third Estate, who were already impoverished, the government was about to try the other two estates. In 1789, Louis XVI finally decided to call a meeting of the Estates General, which was the French equivalent to the British Parliament. It was a bold move, considering that this political body had not met in more than 1.5 centuries. The Estates General was composed of representatives from the 3 estates of French society. The First Estate and the Second Estate had about 300 delegates each. The Third Estate had almost 600 delegates. To make matters even worse for Louis XVI, France was witnessing a time of widespread economic suffering. In cities, unemployment had reached staggering levels. Prices had rocketed, causing extensive panic and anger. In many rural areas, agricultural production had dropped sharply. Food was in severe shortage. Because of their economic conditions, the lower classes, who were the 2/3 of the population, suffered the most. France was about to explode. In May 1789, Louis XVI formally opened the proceedings of the Estates General. But the meeting was troubled from the start with the problem of voting. Traditionally, each estate would vote as a group and have one vote. That meant that the First and the Second Estates could outvote the Third Estate by 2-1. This time, however, the Third Estate, having been inspired by the American Revolution, wanted to assert their own rights by demanding that each deputy have one vote. When the king made it known that he was in favor of each estate having one vote, the Third Estate were furious and reacted quickly. On June 17, 1789, it called itself a National Assembly and declared their determination to draw up a constitution. 3 days later, when the members of the Third Estate came for a gathering, they found the doors of their meeting room locked. Believing they had been deliberately locked out by the king, they were infuriated and moved to a nearby indoor tennis court. There, they swore that they would continue to meet until they had produced a French constitution. This event became known as the Tennis Court Oath, which is often considered as the beginning of the French Revolution. The rapid developments forced the timid and indecisive Louis XVI to back down a little and ordered that all the 3 estates meet together. But the Third Estate would not budge. Several days later, Louis was forced to agree that a vote would be counted by head. It was an important victory for the National Assembly because its right to act as the legislative power in the nation was recognized. However, the king's concession was too late. The ordinary people in Paris, who had been agitated by the rapid chain of events, moved into open rebellion. On July the 14th, a large crowd marched to the Bastille, which was a political prison and a fortress where weapons were stored. For Parisians, it was a symbol of everything they hated under the old regime. After fighting with the governor and some troops, the crowd took over the fortress and dismantled it. This event has become in history known as the Storming of the Bastille. The date of July the 14th is now marked as a national holiday in France, celebrated as the birth of freedom and justice. In the meantime, due to the mounting economic crisis, riots and violence broke out throughout France, both in cities and the countryside. Louis XVI soon learned that his royal troops had also deserted him. Royal authority collapsed. Well, that is all that I wanted to talk about today. In the next video, I will be talking about the drafting of the Constitution, the execution of both Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, and how Napoleon came to power. I think I will also be talking about popular stories about Louis XVI and Antoinette. So please subscribe so you won't miss it. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.